I know it's Christmas, but do you realize it won't be long until the new year will be here? And I know if you're like me, you're already probably thinking about things that are on your list when it comes to a new year. And one of the things I want you to put on your list as we at Grace Bible Church approach New Year's is the kickoff of what we are going to call Grace Community Groups. Now, you may ask, what is a Grace Community Group? Well, think of it like it's the new connection point for our church. It's the way that the 180 plus people who call Grace Bible Church their home are going to start connecting and developing relationships with each other. So what is the purpose of a Grace Community Group? Well, it's probably best understood by thinking of two different spectrums, two things that are on the opposite end of each other that should be taking place in the church, and trying to connect them together. You see, when we gather on Sunday, the whole body is gathered together to proclaim through biblical teaching and display through the ordinance of communion and baptism the gospel. And that's the congregation gathered publicly primarily for teaching and proclamation. That's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is this thing we know the church needs to do, and that is to disciple, to build relationships with each other, to help brothers and sisters grow in their likeness to Christ. But how do we take our public gathering on Sunday and our discipleship individually and bring them together? We think that's what Grace Community Groups are going to do. They are the means to connect public gathering and the private gathering of individuals in growing in grace and in Christ likeness. So how are we going to do this? Well, you need to understand that we're going to meet and where we're going to meet and how often we're going to meet. We'll be meeting the first 4 Sundays of every month. So on the first Sunday, the second Sunday, the third Sunday, and the fourth Sunday, there'll be a Grace Community Group meeting. And they'll meet at different homes each time so that we won't be seeing it as just another get-together at the church for a Bible study, but an environment in a home where we can, in a relaxed atmosphere, enjoy each other's fellowship, get to know each other, and grow closer to one another in our relationships with each other. So there are going to be, at the beginning, initially, 4 opportunities in a given month for you to plug into a community group. And I know some of you are going to try to wonder which group you should be in, so feel free to try out any of those groups as we get started. But sooner or later, what I want you to do is to commit to that group, because you'll see in a moment how important it is to belong, particularly to that group and what it is doing. So who's going to lead these groups? Well, our leadership, along with a designated assistant, is going to be doing that. Our leadership, the 4 guys who help me serve in pastoral ministry, are going to lead those groups in those 4 Sunday evenings of the month. And we've already picked and assigned an assistant to each one of them. We've been training them, we've been equipping them, helping them as an assistant to learn how to really serve and be a part of what we're doing in the community groups as they develop. Now, here's a good question. What happens if this community group, which starts out as 4 groups, grows big enough that we just can't contain all those people in one meeting place? Well, that's what we're going to call the multiplication process. You see, that assistant who has been working with the leader all along has been being trained so that one day when that group has to multiply, rather than call it divide or split, when it multiplies and grows, that assistant is going to become the leader of that new group. That leader will get an assistant who he'll begin to train. And that former leader will have another assistant given to him so that he can be training him. It's just our way of making sure that if this grows and as it develops, that we'll be able to be ready to shepherd and care for the groups as they multiply and spread out in our community. So, what would an evening at a community group look like? Well, there on your screen, you'll see we've broken it down to a 10-minute introduction. It's a time where we just get to say hey to each other, welcome people who are new and are visiting. Then there's going to be a meal time and a fellowship time, and that's going to be around 1 hour. It's a time where, just like no other time, you get to really spend a few moments in a non-teaching format, talking and chatting and getting to know each other around that mealtime. Then there's going to be a Bible study, devotional, sermon discussion, which will take about 20 minutes. Just a chance for all the groups to be talking about the same thing so that we can all be seeing how we're growing and developing and maybe even getting questions answered in our lives about what we're studying at Grace Bible Church. Then there's going to be a prayer time. This is going to be the most wonderful time because as you've got to know each other, as you spent time together around a meal and you talked about God's Word, you're going to want to pray for your brother or your sister who is in that room. And it's going to be different than just a prayer request that goes out to the church on an email. You're really going to know what they're struggling with. You're going to know what it is that they really are asking God to do, and you're going to get to join them in prayer. So, we know that we're going to kick this off in January, the very first Sunday of January. But what are the long-term goals of what we would like to see accomplished in the community groups? Well, for one, we want everybody, as we've said, to grow in their personal relationships with each other, to develop a time where they pray together more closely, have biblical friendships in a way maybe they haven't developed just by showing up on Sunday morning and being a part of the large group gathering. We want them to learn to do ministry and outreach together. Just think about this. What if your community group took on some particular outreach that was theirs, that they loved, that they saw a need in the community to do or in the church to do, and they took that on and they made it theirs. They prayed about it, they served together around it, and it was their thing. That to me looks a lot different than what we've been doing, where we will announce a ministry outreach and then we'll just ask everybody on Sunday morning to go sign up to help us with it. This is going to change the whole outlook of what ministry outreach is all about. And what about this long-term goal? Just think about your neighbor or your friend that really, for whatever reason, won't show up on Sunday morning to the large public gathering, won't come to the Bible study on Wednesday night, but might just come over to your house and to that community group's gathering as you are grilling out, as you're having a meal, and it's a relaxed environment for them just to get to be around and to be introduced to true believers. That might just be one of the greatest connection points that happens when you see this as a tool to evangelize and reach out to your community. So, how are people in our church going to connect with all of this? It's a great idea, you say. It sounds wonderful. I'm excited about it. How are we going to get people to connect with this? Well, number one, we want to put that ball in your court. In other words, we want you as a congregation to see this as your role and opportunity to invite others to be a part of your community group. Let's say on a given Sunday morning, you've seen a new person show up. Maybe they've been here for a week or two. You want to go to them and say, have you heard about our community groups? If you haven't, we'd love for you to check ours out and invite them. Just reach out and get them to be a part of what you are doing in your group. We'll also be announcing that from the pulpit on Sunday morning, reminding people of community groups and the importance of that. We'll also be putting it on our website. We'll also be putting it out in email announcements, on and on. We'll keep it before you so that it becomes a part of something you know that is yours, and it's your opportunity to connect people to what we are doing here at Grace Bible Church. Now, you might have a question, having listened to all this. Why don't we do all of this through Sunday school? I mean, couldn't we just do all those things really through our Sunday school that already exist? Well, I don't think we can, and here's the reason. Sunday school's primary focus is a teaching time. And it's a teaching time where we divide up in different age groups and with different people so that for them we can tailor the teaching and the learning curve for them in such a way that they get it. I mean, obviously, a child who is in a Sunday school class can't really comprehend some of the things that we're talking about in the adult class. But when we come to community groups, it's not about segregating ages and groups. It's about young and old, moms and dads, single people, children, everybody coming to the community group meeting that night and just seeing what it looks like for Christians to hang out together, for Christians to pray together, for Christians to really be concerned about each other, regardless of their ages or stages of life. So moms and dads, brothers and sisters, all family comes to those community groups so that they get to experience something that we know can never, ever happen when it comes to Sunday school. So that's why we've chosen to let Sunday school be a vehicle to primarily be used for teaching and training. Community groups has a whole nother purpose, as we've already talked about. So what do you need to do? What do you need to do to be sure that you, come the first Sunday of January, plug into a community group? Well, what you want to do is you want to go to the website. And when you go to the website, you'll find the link to the community groups. And when you click on that link, you'll see a paragraph that will help you see what community groups are about, a much shorter version of what I've told you today. But it describes what it's about. And underneath that, you will see the 4 group leaders. You can click on that group leader's name, and it will give you details and information about where they meet, when they meet, and so on. If you don't really care for that and you want to look more geographically in relation to where they live, there's a map you can click on, and that map will let you see where they live, and it'll help you determine whether that's closest to you or the place you want to connect to. Now, obviously, that list of names is going to grow as the assistants take on a multiplication process and develop that next group that they lead, and more locations will develop. But this is our starting point come January. Now, I hope that this has kind of given you a picture of what community groups are about and what we're trying to do with them as we start in January. So what I want you to do is go to the website, check it out, start calling, asking about the leadership and the community group that he's leading and who's in it, what's going to be going on. And you do that and you'll really find, I think, some of the richest blessings that you could ever find in developing these kind of relationships with your brothers and sisters at Grace Bible Church. If you have any other questions, please feel free to give me a call, talk to me about it, talk to one of our leadership about it. We'd all love to chat with you and let you know just how excited we are and what we want to accomplish with our Grace community groups.